Are they fighting disinformation, or is this another strain of propaganda? We're going to be talking with Ari Bloomkatz, the editor of In These Times magazine, about that. And then, do you think that only the wealthy can have a financial planner? If you do, uh, that is incorrect. One of my sponsors, Megan Financial, they specialize in looking at people in unions, working class, and and middle class people. And I want you to hear them out, because whether you're in a union or not, if you are working class or middle class, they can help you to plan your future, no matter what time it is in your life. No matter what time it is in your life, the earlier the better, of course. But no matter what time it is in your life, they can help you. They will be your financial planners. You know how wealthy people have a money person? Well, you too can have one. So we're going to talk about that. And then, of course, Dr. Max Wolf will talk about what's up with this down economy. We do know that it is really pounding President Biden in the polls. So Bidenomics. I mean, how are you making it? Many people are charging groceries. I mean, you tell me, how's the economy working out for you? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773 WCPT. And just overall, let me know what's on your mind in terms of the news. What is the issue that is top of mind for you? That's my question today. Call me at 773. I don't care what we're talking about. You let me know what issue for you is really, really driving you. What is something that really occupies your mind? What is it? Let's get to some of these headlines. 3 people were killed in a shooting, yet another, at the University of Nevada and Las Vegas. A gunman opened fire on campus yesterday before he was killed by the police, according to officials. A 4th victim was critically injured, but is in stable condition. Police said they know the identity of the gunman, but they have not yet released his name or the motive. I wish they would release these names and motives. I think you need to know who they are. I think you need to know what their motives are. You're not obscuring anyone. Were they connected to the military? So many of them are. Um, Mental illness, no, that's not it. A lot of people are very angry. Mentally ill people hurt themselves. Angry people hurt others. Remember that. 4 Republican presidential hopefuls sparred in a debate last night. Got a little nasty, but there it was. Former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, who's leading the second tier. Indeed, Donald Trump is way far ahead of the pack. But she took some incoming fire, but most people believe that she won the debate. Florida Governor DeSantis was also part of the debate, as was Vivek Ramaswamy and former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. Former House Speaker. Wow. He has, Kevin McCarthy, will be leaving the U.S. House of Representatives, like Paul Ryan before him, like John Boehner. What is up with the House and the speakers? As soon as they can get out of there, they run for the hills. He wants to, quote, serve America in new ways, close quote. He said yesterday the California Republican was ousted as Speaker in October after a revolt by hard right members. The same thing happened to John Boehner and Paul Ryan. What's going on within the party? What's going on in the House of Representatives? He'll leave office at the end of the month, but a special election to fill his seat may not happen until summer. Wow, narrowing the House Republican majority until then. Republicans yesterday blocked a vote to advance a national security bill that includes billions of dollars in Ukraine aid. What do you think about that? 6 pro-Trump electors were charged in Nevada yesterday, claiming to be presidential electors in 2020 and submitting certificates to Congress falsely stating that Trump won the election in Nevada. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. What is the issue that's really, really, really got you going? It's 40 degrees today. That will be the high. It'll be cloudy in Chicago. 44 degrees, partly sunny in Minneapolis, St. Paul. In the NBA tonight, the Hornets will be facing off against Chicago in Chicago. The Spurs will be facing off against Minnesota in Minnesota. There was no NFL activity last night. In the NHL, the Predators 4, Chicago 3, the Wild 5, the Flames 2. And those are just some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. So, everybody, let's talk. Let's talk with Pastor Darius Brooks. Pastor Brooks, before you give us the good news, I want you to tell us about all this food that you've been passing out, particularly in this season, but you do it throughout the year, thankfully, at Grace Central Church in Westchester, Illinois. How you doing today?
I am great, Grant. Santita, I'm so awesome. And Great Central Church, 10216 South Kitchener Street, Westchester, Illinois. We had a full day 2 weeks ago, last week, and then just on this Tuesday, they were around the corner. Oh, my goodness. It's almost like we are a grocery store feeding people that's really hungry. Santita, I'm so excited. Great Central Church, 10216 South Kitchener Street, Westchester, Illinois, every Tuesday from 5 till 7 and Wednesdays from noon till 2. Seniors, so they won't be out in the evening. And y'all, we give food. We don't get no peanut butter, jelly, and crackers. Great Central Church, gracecentral.net, Great Central 10216 South Kitchener Street, Westchester, Illinois. Every Tuesday from 5 till 7, and on Wednesdays for seniors from noon till 2. Santita, this morning I'm excited about getting into the good news, and congratulations on all that you do. Really, really, really. And loving the way God is doing some things in your heart with the radio station, more than you'll ever know. People are watching and people are listening to you. I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about. This morning I want to talk to you guys about it may be held down, but it won't be held back. 2 Thessalonians 2:7, for the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now holdeth back will hold back until the taking of him is out of the way. And what the Word of God is saying is about, you don't have to worry about wrong. It's going to take care of itself. You don't have to worry about you not paying your bills. They're going to go away on its own. Santita, I told somebody the other day, people of God, listen, you don't have to do nothing crazy. Just don't take care of your teeth. They'll go away on their own. When you're dealing with situations and problems in life.
You're on mute. No answer from Dr. Knighton.
On its own. That's what Thessalonians is talking about today. But the one who holds back, or the one who don't let that stuff take its place, will move those things out the way. But the one who let those things stay there, the only way good stuff is going to happen is, Santita, put your seatbelt on as I get ready to close. Sometimes God has to permit what he hates to create what he loves. So when we have something in store, and God knows he got to produce it through us, even sometimes when we're in the way, he'll move us out the way in order for that thing to produce. I don't know who I'm talking to this morning, but I'm talking to somebody. Sometimes a lot of our challenges are not the problems. It's the way we're viewing ourselves in context of what we're doing. We're fearfully and wonderfully made, God said. We can make some of the best decisions and choices in life. Somebody said we could turn lemons into lemonade. In the New Testament, he used messages, a cloud of fire, to put over the Israelites' head to lead them in the precise direction that they was going to when they could not see for themselves. People of God, it's called trusting God. He speaks to us every day. So do not be alarmed by what's happening, even if it's out of your hands. Trust God. Every messenger, he speaks to you about your personal situation, because people speak without us speak to us, and you and me. Normally, people speak to what we're really dealing with. Sometimes you can hit some good stuff, and it don't pertain to where you are in life. Like, that's good stuff. But when God is speaking, he only speaks to our personal place and space, which is our spirit. Here, he sends messages all day long. What did you hear yesterday? What did you hear the day before? What's in your head right now that's bothering you? That it won't be held down. It may be held down, but it won't be held back, because you're going to use what God told you to do.
I appreciate that because the thing is, it is a personal relationship that you do have. It is a personal
Yeah,
relationship. And so God will speak to you personally. Let me ask you this. How are you dealing with, this is the time of year when suicides go up. I mean, people feel a lot of joy, but they also feel a lot of despair. Pastor Darius Brooks. Do you see that? How do you deal with that? And I'm going to ask Alex to continue to keep me on mute because I think that people need to hear this because sometimes, what do you say? And then what should we do if we feel that someone's going through a really hard time in this particular season?
Santita, the word of God says,
You're on mute.
you are chosen, but those I chose, I qualify, justify, and sanctify. When you ask God for something, people just in general, God will orchestrate events to move you in his will. In other words, when you are dealing with situations for real and you say, God, ask me, God, I need you. Come. And then if you do it for real, God knows how to orchestrate people, places, and things. Watch this. That literally and figuratively will come to your rescue to help you. You got to be honest in your heart. The suicide thing is the easy part. When people want to just go up and throw in the towel, that's the easy part. The essential mystery is to want God's direction in your life so he can say, okay, got you now, because he's not going to bombard us to come in. We got to say, God, I need you. Open up to surrender. Once we do this in a real way, God will never let us down. I give them the answers to suicide. Suicide is not the answer. It never have been the answer, and it never will be the answer. The answer is whoever you are and you're seeking help, God is here. Seek help. Go to a therapist. Go to a friend. Go to somebody. And they're out there. I know often it's hard because we don't think that somebody will hear us, or often we don't want to share it with someone. But to ask in the Bible, it means to produce. To ask means to go after in translation. To ask means, I don't like this. I need somebody to show me how to do this. I don't like this. Ask means to reach out or to ask someone to do something or ask God to do it. And watch this, even if the people that you don't want to help you is in front of you, God. Santita, I walk up to people in stores and I'll share with them what God put on my heart. And like yesterday, it was a couple there. And I said, I don't know you, but God said, this is your wife, so don't take her for granted. Do you know, the girl didn't start crying, Santita, the guy did. And when I left and I went and paid for their stuff, I went to the car in the parking lot, and the girl walked up to me. She was like Israeli or something. And she said, I was wondering if he loved me. So you ain't got to worry about that. He'll do it. People of God, God will orchestrate events to move you in his will. Whoever you are that's dealing with suicide, reach out and don't think it's going to come your way. It's going to come another kind of way. God is really God. He's not a joke or a game. He's not religious. He's not that like we've been taught. Like when you said a personal thing, when you're driving in your car, whoever I'm talking to, if you're driving in your car, you're by yourself. If you're listening to Santita right now, just say an honest, sincere prayer. My phone number at church is 708-344-5020. Call me anonymously. Call me. I promise you, if you call me, I'll show you that the day after you think you want to commit suicide, it'll get better. You better hear the words that are coming out of my mouth. The enemy wants to kill, steal, and to destroy. And whoever he can get in their heads and hearts about taking their lives, that's what his goal is. Whoever you are, I tell Grace Central this. If suicide is not of God, I just tell the truth at Grace Central. He said, I've come that you may have life and it more abundantly. Find someone you can talk to. 708-344-5020. 708-344-5020. Call me. I don't care if it's 50 or 100. I promise you, you give me a couple of days and I'll show you the day that you think you want to commit suicide. The day after, I'm going to show you when it's going to get better.
And I'm going to tell you, even if you're not a believer, because I'm sensitive to the fact that there are, for a whole lot of reasons, a lot of people who say they don't believe and a lot of people who don't. What I try to do with this good news for everybody is to give you something. Well, to give something to hold on to because I've been confronted like that. I do that, and then I know a lot of people. Some people have been turned off by the church for one reason or another, and I get that. I get that, but I know that you cannot church is not the only place where you find hope
Mhm.
and faith and love.
And you said something that was important, Santita. You said believing is not about church. Hope is not about church. Faith is not about church. Santita, and people, whoever you are, that's what has messed up a lot of people. God is not church. God is spirit. And he talks and speaks to our spirit. And because I often say, if you think education is expensive, you should try ignorance. Or the most dangerous place in the world is sincere ignorance. It's sincere ignorance. The most dangerous place in the world is sincere ignorance. God uses everything to help us. We just think it's church. Now, majority of the time, it's the good news, but you got to think churches are just like hospitals. You got good ones and bad ones. Churches are just like police. You got a good cop, a bad cop.
Sure.
A good doctor, a bad cop.
But you know,
but God's perfect.
But I can appreciate if that's not your thing. Even if you are, because my mother's mother, church was not her thing. And she was someone who deeply, deeply believed in God. And I just want everyone to understand that there are many, many ways to go at this. But I want you to receive the good news, because that's what it is. It's good news. I want your heart to be lighter today. Yeah. I love you, Pastor. Pastor, tell me how we can worship with you very quickly.
Grace Central Church, 10216 South Kitchener Street, Westchester, Illinois, every Sunday from 10:30 till noon. And you can also watch us on YouTube Tuesdays from 7 to 8. Great words, stuff like what you're talking about
Pastor
is what
Darius
I teach
Brooks.
on strongly.
Pastor Darius Brooks, everybody. Love you, Pastor Brooks.
I love it.
Let us talk about the 10-7 project. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. The information wars on the Israel-Hamas war are ratcheting up. Let's talk about it with Ari Bloomcats, the editor of In These Times magazine. Back in just a minute. Thank you so much, Darius, honey. I'm sorry I was going over you, but I gotta, just move with me, because when I gotta get moving, I gotta get moving.
I love it. I love it.
Okay, thank you, sweetie. And give my love to Deborah and Dasha. Absolutely. You'll hear from me. All right, baby. Love you.
Okay. Love you too. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Okay. There we go. Okay. Okay. Hey, everybody. How you doing today? How you doing?
Mr. Bloomcats is on.
Mr. Bloomcats, how you doing, Ari?
I'm doing all right, Santita. Good morning.
Honey, you never stop working, do you? These folks will keep you running.
Hey, we all are, and particularly in this moment, we got to keep pushing.
There is a Reverend Jackson has issued a call for a peace summit. I want to give you some information about it. I don't know if Aaron has talked to you about it. We're still planning it. It's going to be next Friday and Saturday at the Rainbow Push headquarters.
Oh, nice. That sounds great.
And I certainly want you to be there. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so amazing. It takes a ton of courage and a ton of leadership. That's so great.
Oh, absolutely. It is. In fact, Jim Zogby is really one of the conveners as well. I can't wait to share that with you.
Oh, amazing. What sorts of things are we going to be talking about there?
Well, really calling for a ceasefire, calling for peace, really not even just calling for it, demanding it. This is the moment. This is Reverend has felt that this is a moment, and Jim Zogby said, well, Reverend took such a hit on this. has taken such a hit on this issue for the past 40 years, go for it, call for
Yeah.
it. And well, I mean, you know what? Look, when you're doing the right things, this is what happens. Okay.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
remember it was Rabbi Meir Kahana who actually came after Reverend during the 84
Oh,
and
really?
80. Oh my gosh. They threatened he was trying to march on our home. They
Oh my God.
interrupted. Oh yeah.
1 minute.
So many death threats came from them. And from
Oh my
that
God.
faction. You know what? The Lord built a shield of protection around us. Thank God for that.
Wow.
And
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
it was quite a moment. Um, and and I mean,
I'm sure.
and that group came after us because it was
30
because he
seconds.
had called for uh, Israeli security and Palestinian justice. At that time, you could not mention Palestinians in public discourse. We had a
Yeah.
no talk policy. So, look,
Oh,
we're still
wow.
here. Oh, yeah. You couldn't mention their names. You could not mention
Wow.
them.
10 seconds.
We got a article coming out.
Stand by.
The next issue of the magazine. It's a special issue on Palestine, and there's one important article there about the link between Kahane and the current Israeli government.
Oh,
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
this homeboy came after us.
Stand by. We're about to go live.
Okay, gotcha. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. I mean, the Israel-Hamas war is heating up, but so is information about it or propaganda about it. It really depends upon how you look at it. There are some of the most powerful groups in the country are now coming together, Jewish groups, and they are saying, we are going to counter the misinformation. I mean, and this is AIPAC. The American Jewish Committee, the Jewish Federations of North America, the Anti-Defamation League, AIPAC, the Conference of Major American Jewish Organizations. They are among the most powerful Jewish interest groups in the country, and they've come together to launch something called the 10-7 Project. And so the question is, what is the 10-7 Project? What will they be putting forth? And really, at the end of the day, Ari Bloomcats, is it truth? Call us at 773-763-9278. Executive editor of In These Times magazine. I did not know that you'd been at Tikkun. One of our favorite people in the world. That's been his spot. We love our rabbi. Love him. Oh my gosh.
Excellent.
I was like, wait a minute. I knew I loved you for a reason. What? Oh yeah.
Oh, excellent.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
No. We go all the way back. Me and my father go back, like more than 50 years. But talk to me.
Amazing.
Oh yeah. I said, I knew I liked this guy for a reason. There was much more to it. Tell me, what is the 10-7 Project? And what are they intending to do? Who's involved? I mean, I named these organizations. Maybe you should give us some context so we can know who the ADL are. We had Leslie Williams on earlier in the week saying, wait a minute, and there's a lot of pushback on them being a civil rights organization. People are saying, no, they're not. AIPAC, there's a lot of pushback on them as they push back on progressive candidates. The Jewish Federations of North America, they tend to be conservative. They tend to be mainstream. But who are they and what are they intending to do?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Santita, and good morning. And, this 10-7 Project and the organizations that are behind it, this is a really interesting development. These are very major establishment legacy Jewish organizations in the United States. We've got the American Jewish Committee, we've got the Jewish Federations, we have the ADL, we have AIPAC, we have the Conference of Presidents of major American Jewish organizations. And, their supposed aim is to fight disinformation. And what is, of course, the irony here is that these are the groups that have been issuing the most disinformation for this whole entire time since October 7th. And what I see them doing here, I see this representing several things. And one of the things that I see this representing is these organizations and the pro-Israel and the Israel at Cost organizations and movement in the United States trying to shift and maintain the battleground of the debate here to be one over language, to be a battleground over this fact versus that fact, this word versus that word. And I believe these organizations in the pro-Israel movement feels that as long as they can keep that the battleground, as long as they can keep that the focus, then they can keep people distracted and engaged in these debates in a way that provides cover for the pro-Israel camp and for the war and for the pro-war camp. And it's a very direct way of trying to combat calls for a ceasefire. And in a lot of ways, this actually represents some real desperation of the pro-war camp. They realize that they do not have the American public on their side. They know that the American public overwhelmingly wants a ceasefire, overwhelmingly wants a ceasefire. And so they're getting together and trying to figure out what to do. How do we keep support for this war up? How do we keep focus on it up? And one of the things that they've come to here is, okay, if we can keep the focus on 10-7 and just 10-7 and push the narrative about just 10-7, and that's one of the explicit things that's the directive of this group is to, promote and continuously publish narratives about 10-7. They feel that if that can be the focus and they can distract from the focus of this genocide that's happening, of the thousands and thousands of children who have died and are going to die because of the Israeli violence, then they can provide cover for the pro-war movement right now. They can provide cover for the Israeli government right now, and they can provide cover for all of the politicians in the U.S. who do not have the courage in this moment to call for a ceasefire.
We're talking with Ari Bloomkatz, the executive editor of In These Times magazine. Support them, they support you. Is this so? You're saying that this is yet another front in the propaganda war? Because that's not, of course, that's not the PR on it.
Absolutely. It's an extreme move in the propaganda war right now. And, another thing it represents to me, it represents several things, one of which is, the inclusion of AIPAC in this group is a really, interesting and scary inclusion in so many ways. And, we have to remember that, AIPAC Political Action Committee, not so long ago endorsed dozens of Republicans who refused to certify Joe Biden as president. They endorsed people like Jim Jordan and Scott Perry. Scott Perry of Pennsylvania, openly supports the Great Replacement theory. Jim Jordan of Ohio, is extremely conservative as well. And so, David Grossman on Twitter pointed this out, that what we're seeing here is now an alignment of the major Jewish organizations in the U.S. aligning themselves with pro-January 6th organizations and movements. And that tells us something really, really interesting. That tells us something really scary, which is that these major Jewish organizations are willing to align themselves with such a right-wing movement as, pro-January 6th folks in exchange for trying to push a pro-war, pro-Israel agenda right now.
What? But why are they? We do, traditionally one does not associate, uh, I guess, the Jewish position with being right wing. But the fact is, the Jewish community is not monolithic. You do have a right wing. You and I were sharing just before we came on air. It was the right wing part of that community that came after Reverend Hard in '84 and '88, and really from the time that he and just many people after he and Mrs. Jackson went to the Middle East, calling for peace, calling for Israeli security and Palestinian justice in a time when you couldn't mention the term Palestinian. Uh, what is this right wing element? And we all have them, Ari. I mean, let's be clear.
Yeah.
The right wing element is an element that every group has. Tell me about them in the Jewish community.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that always stick with me is I was watching the video when Donald Trump gave his sort of first big speech at the APAC conference and received a standing ovation from APAC and the members that were there. And when I saw that, we had known about APAC and APAC's conservative history for such a long time. But when we saw that, particularly after everything Donald Trump has said and all of his xenophobia and prejudice and bigotry that he has been pushing out and was pushing out during the campaign, and all these, APAC members got up and applauded him. That told us a lot about the establishment and legacy Jewish institutions in the U.S. But one of the things about these institutions is that, they go out here and they claim to speak for American Jews. They can't claim to speak for all American Jews. And that's just laughable. They really don't at all, and their organizations are wildly undemocratic. And, one of the best examples of that for me is when the Workers' Circle, which is a great, amazing progressive Jewish organization. It's led by Ann Tovak. Ann Tovak and Workers' Circle, they pulled out of the conference of presidents. And Tovak basically said, this is an undemocratic place. This is not okay. This is not representing us. This is not representing progressives. I'm out. And, and we're out. And, that conference of presidents, they rejected by a secret vote, they rejected J Street. And J Street is a pretty mainstream, in many ways, pretty middle of the road organization. And so none of the progressive Jewish groups are, part of the Conference of Presidents. There's, the Zionist Organization of America, which is headed by Mort Klein, is a major figure in the Conference of Presidents. And Mort Klein has been, openly aggressive against Black Lives Matter. And Mort Klein's own deputy says he's racist and sexist. I think he once said that dangerous Soros-funded extremist group of haters during the 2020 George Floyd uprising. The idea that these organizations represent Jews is wild, and one of the other things about them is that they are largely white organizations, and they do not represent inclusion in the Jewish community. They do not represent the multiracial and multi-ethnic dimensions of the Jewish communities as well. It's laughable when these organizations say they speak for American Jews.
But they say that they're trying to shift the narrative because they feel that the narrative is biased against them. Help me with that. I mean, because
Absolutely.
Initially the corporate media were criticized because they didn't even look at the Palestinians. They're getting bombed to smithereens. They didn't even bring their stories forward. But when you got in the streets, when progressives and with people just got in the streets, and you had this march of 300,000 people in Washington and hundreds of thousands of people all over the United States, let alone around the world. You saw the corporate media beginning to kind of shift, even though Mehdi Hassan's been dropped. His show has been dropped, but I don't know. There's just so much going on. Talk to me. What about this? They say they're trying to fight bias in the media against them. Huh?
Yeah, it's so interesting. And, Santita, like one of the things it makes me think about, and, this is a really tough moment, and it's really sad and infuriating and really enraging on so many levels. But there are, in this moment, also signs of hope and resistance. And one of the things for me that has been a real sign of hope is how incredible the ecosystem of left media has been in this moment. And if you don't mind, I'd like to some of the left media that's been so critical right now in some of the things we've done. So, when we're over at Truth Out and Alani Lynn Price over at Truth Out, Max Alvarez at the Real News Network, Ariel Angel at Jewish Currents, the whole Jewish Currents crew, the N+1 crew, Laura Witt and the Prism crew, the folks at Scalawag, here in Chicago also, Morgan Johnson and the Tribe, put out really amazing content. Sarah Lazar of Workday Magazine and Jeff Shirky, Luis Feliz Leon of Labor Notes, and the Labor Notes crew, Alex Press and the Jacobin crew. There is really exciting in many ways things happening in the left media ecosphere. Right now, people are working in left media harder. Like, people are working around the clock and hustling. Like, this is our theory of change. And what 10-7 Project shows me in a lot of ways is that these mainstream or even, right-wing Jewish organizations feel like they are losing the narrative.
But isn't that what Jonathan Greenblatt said that? The head of AIPAC. In a conference call, it is reported that he said, you guys, you're missing this. We're losing the PR war. And it's generational. Do you not know the kind of fight that we're fighting? Do you think they know? Because it just seems like Americans have shifted on this. And I think it's caught people by surprise.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Greenblatt of the ADL is an interesting figure here. And I kind of, I was looking at this project pretty closely. And one of the things I was wondering about it was whether or not this formation is also a way for these right-wing and mainstream Jewish institutions to try and get some amount of control over Greenblatt, because right now
You have a caller.
for them acting like the drunk guy at the party that like won't stop talking and saying the wrong thing. And like and he's just like, he's hanging out with Elon Musk, who's spitting all sorts of anti-Semitic rhetoric, and he's going after progressive Jewish groups and calling them hate groups, and like he's just like going like wild. And I kind of wonder if this formation, if one of the sort of like side effects is to try and get him and his messaging under control, because the ADL is taking serious hits right now, and even from within them, like their own staff is, what the heck is going on here? What I think they're feeling
Stepping away for 1 second.
Statements, like even from their own staff. So I think this is a sign of desperation. This is a sign of a bunch of like folks coming together. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall of some of these Zoom conversations, or if they were in-person conversations. about, okay, what do we do? We are losing all the young people. We are losing the American public. We are losing, huge swaths of the Jewish public. Like, what are we going to do here? And then they're like, okay, I have an idea. Let's just showing people as many pictures and telling as many stories from the massacre on October 7th. And maybe if we do that, maybe if we keep doing that incessantly as much as possible, then people will be distracted from all of this horrible stuff that Israel is doing right now. And it's a sign of desperation to me.
Well, I mean, but how are they going to counter 16,000 people killed, 1 million people who've been asked to go to the south, and they're bombing the south now of Gaza? The UN has said that this is the most unsafe place in the world to raise a child. How do you, 90+% of the water is undrinkable. If the bombs don't kill you, the disease will, because they cannot bathe, they cannot use the bathroom in a sanitary way. They can't. How do they plan to counter that? That's not a lie.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, these organizations and their leaders and their comms departments are betting on something that is frankly deeply, deeply insulting to all of our American Jewish communities and to the public. And what they're betting on is that we're stupid. They're betting on us not attention and not caring about sanctity of human life and about us not caring about Palestinians and they're betting on what they've always bet on in a lot of ways, which is that their efforts to dehumanize Palestinians, their efforts to paint the Israeli government violence against Palestinians as some sort of righteous violence. They're betting on that, and they're going to keep pushing on that, but that's not going to happen. And, one of the reasons it's not going to happen is because one of the things we're seeing in this moment is we've got a situation where there are organizations like these organizations on one end that are supporting the war, and we have organizations on the progressive, Jewish left end and the other piece, Jewish left and Jewish mainstream that care about peace and are calling for a ceasefire. And then, we've got some amount of centrists and liberal Zionists here. And this is an analysis that Rebecca Vilkomerson and Dania Rajendra have been talking about. And what's very important to note here is that there's not a lot of space anymore for centrism or for liberal Zionism. There used to be this thing, and there still is in some ways, but there used to be this thing that people would talk about, which is PEP. They would talk about being progressive except for Palestine. Well, that's not possible really anymore. And I think a lot of what we're seeing in this moment is that, moving forward, we're going to see some real, some more problems, I should say, with anyone that is claiming to be a liberal Zionist, with anyone that's claiming to be progressive except Palestine. That window is narrowing. And so this 10-7 project doesn't really have a constituency to talk to anymore. And in many ways, they're just talking to themselves. I don't know who they think they're talking to. I don't think they know who their propaganda is going to. And and another reason for that is Santita, if you and I were gonna let's say you and I were getting lunch and we were like, okay, we both work in media, and like we're seeing all of this disinformation come out right now. We're seeing the American public, leaning one way, and it doesn't make sense. Like, what are we gonna do? I wouldn't like talk to you and be like, okay, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna talk to some Jewish friends of mine, and we're gonna get together and try to combat that. Like, that's a defeatist and ridiculous strategy. What we would do is probably be like, okay, we got to get a multiracial, multi-ethnic coalition of media organizations together to really like work on this and to really figure this out together, because we can't figure this out by ourselves. We can't figure this out like alone. We have to do this in solidarity with each other. We have to do this as a multiracial, multi-ethnic coalition. And this 10-7 project, which is like, these organizations are largely headed by white men, they're largely headed by white people, they're largely headed by, right-wing folks. Like they're not pretending to be diverse or like in really any way.
Ari Bloomcats, everybody, he is on fire. We've got Augie. He's going to talk to us during the break. I know you got to go, but I wanted him to weigh in and give us a comment. Everybody, if you think you need to be wealthy to have a financial planner, you are wrong, wrong, wrong. I want working and middle class people to listen to Mecca Financial in the upcoming block. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show.
No.
Augie?
Right.
Is Augie still there?
Yes.
Hi, Augie. I'm sorry. I've got Mr. Bloomcats here with you.
Okay, Letitia, how you doing? Haven't talked to you for a while.
Great hearing
And
your voice.
your station, WCPT, says facts matter, doesn't it?
Yes.
Well, when you look at the facts of foreign exchange and gold reserves, Israel comes out to be one of the richer countries of the world. In fact, it has more gold exchange and gold reserves than Canada and United Kingdom, Britain. And remember South Africa, Martin Luther King talked about the gold mines down there. It has more gold reserves than all these other countries. So why do they need more money? It doesn't make sense giving money to the rich, or does it?
Well, no, I mean, and they are military power, but I'm wondering where America's interests converge in all of this, aside from the $500 billion of gas that they have just found off the coast of Gaza. I mean, Ari.
Okay,
hold on,
President
Ari. I wanted Ari to be able to respond to you before we move on. Ari?
Sorry, Augie dropped. I have Dan on.
Ari dropped? Okay.
Yeah, I think that, the issue of more money and, we spend, I think, $3.8 billion a year in aid
to start.
And we're, getting ready to spend so much more. And then, one of the things that in these Times just published a article about is that the U.S. has also been sort of secretly through a back channel supplying Israel with sort of a never-ending, unlimited supply of these supposed smart bombs that the Israeli military is using to drop on Palestinians and drop on in a way that they know are killing just tons and tons of civilians and are admitting are killing so many civilians. And we also know that this is a bit of a protection racket when all of this money is spent, so that this money is used to buy weapons from, many of our weapons manufacturers. And it's and it's all really gross. So, whether or not, a country like, needs, money for, this or that, that's potentially an interesting question. But like, does a country need billions and billions of dollars to fuel a war machine that is committing genocide? Fuel a war machine that is, committing war crimes and devastating human rights at every single turn? It's just absurd. And, at least we're beginning to see some politicians come out and say, maybe not. But overwhelmingly, we're still sending money and weapons. Overwhelmingly, we're still fueling the war machine. And it really is in Biden and the American government, they believe it's in their interest to, keep Israel, the military as strong as it is.
Jesse, it's just about to start.
Okay. Oh,
you're okay, Em. It's a commercial.
Ari, I'm going to have to actually move into another segment, but you know what we need to talk about the profits in war, because I think it's not exclusive to Israel. I mean, it's just, we keep the wars going. And sadly, it's like you've got the religious authority in Rome, in the city of in Vatican City. You've got the banking system in the city of London, in the middle of London. And then you've got the military in the District of Columbia. And I think we've got to talk about that, because we cannot afford to be a war machine. It's not working for us. But,
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for having me on, Santita, and have a great rest of your morning.
You know what, you too, and I'm going to call you a little bit later about this, about what we're doing about what we're doing next Friday and Saturday. And just pardon me, but it's all information. This is like happening, and it's all information. It's been happening over the past few days.
Excellent, great. I'm really excited about it.
Oh, me too. Me too. Blessings to you.
You too, Cynthia. Talk soon.
Thank you. Dan Leckie?
Good morning, Santita. How are you?
Oh, okay. And it's Santita. How are you?
Oh, I am excellent. I apologize about
honey,
that.
Don't worry about it. It happens all the time. It's not like I have like the average everyday name. But Dan, what is your position at Megant?
So I am an investment executive, essentially a financial advisor, educating our clients and members on their retirement options and how to plan and prepare and live through retirement.
I am got a lot of questions for you. Lots and lots.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Because most people believe, and I'm going to say this, that you need to be wealthy to have someone like you in their lives, and that's just not true. And so,
absolutely not.
So when they hear about you, they go, okay, what's that? So I'm going to be bringing you on in a hot second, and I'm so glad that you're here today. After I, I bugged Ron, I was like, well, if you can't come, can you send somebody? Bless his heart. I said, I just need
30 seconds.
People are struggling out here, and they really need some answers. So hold on.
I'm happy to answer anything I can.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much.
10 seconds.
Brought to you.
Stand by.
Thank you.
No problem.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. December 7th, I was about to say 1941. I guess I have Pearl Harbor on my mind today. In 1941, 82 years ago today, the military installation of Pearl Harbor in Hawaii was attacked by Japan. pushing America into the Second World War. We pray for the families of all those who lost their lives and all those who lost their lives on that day, sending all those families so much love, even 82 years later. I'm Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you today as we've been talking about the 10-7 project, just a new war on the propaganda front, if you will, of the Israel-Hamas war. And we're talking with Dr. Max Wolf about the Biden economy. It is really giving him a fit in terms of his poll numbers. And what's up with the down economy? Everybody keeps saying it's getting better, but are you feeling that? Call me at 773-763-9278. And in spite of a tough economy, you can really set yourself up for financial stability in retirement age. And you don't have to be wealthy to have an investment advisor, to have a financial planner. That is Megget Financial's unique mission. And I cannot wait to speak with them and Dan Leckie from that corporation in just a moment. But let's get to some of these headlines, everybody. You don't have to be rich to have a financial planner, to have your own money gal or money guy. Let's go to 3 people were killed in a shooting at the University of Nevada in Las Vegas, everybody. A gunman opened fire on campus yesterday before he was killed by police. A 4th victim was critically injured but is in stable condition. 4 Republican presidential hopefuls, everybody except the front runner, were on stage last night in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, many people say she won the debate. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy and former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie all sparred last night. Border security and gender-affirming care were big issues of the night. And former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, like John Boehner before him and Paul Ryan before him, he's leaving Congress. He wants to, quote, serve America in new ways. Isn't it interesting? These speakers who had to deal with a very vocal and very powerful hard right, they leave. They leave. John Boehner left and has not looked back. Paul Ryan left and he has not looked back, and he is joining them, everybody. He was ousted as Speaker in October after a revolt by the hard right. 6 pro-Trump electors were charged in Nevada yesterday, claiming to be presidential electors in 2020 and submitting certificates to Congress falsely stating that Trump won the election in Nevada. 40 degrees and cloudy in Chicago today. 44 degrees, partly sunny in Minneapolis, St. Paul. In the NBA, the Hornets will be in Chicago tonight playing the Bulls, and the Spurs will be in Minnesota facing off against the Timberwolves. No NFL games last night, shockingly, in the NHL. The Predators 4, Chicago 3, and the Wild 5, and the Flames 2. And those are some of the headlines. Before we go to the headlines, I have been looking at how we can become financially free. Team Hochberg wants to help you. The cornerstone for many people of the American dream is home ownership, but the tough part is trying to get that 20% saved. Most people can't do it. They can't. If you cannot afford $400 for a visit to the emergency room, how are you going to save $40,000? How are you going to save 20? How are you going to save 10? Well, guess what? They have a new approach to home ownership. 1% down, not 20, not 10, not 5, 1% down if you qualify for this program. I want you to call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. If you are looking to purchase a new home, all you'll need for their program is 1% down. And if your credit is down, you know what? They have a credit card. You load it up and you pay the bill by the end of the month, and you can begin to raise your credit score. Well, up until now, this down payment has been the bane of the existences of those who aspire to home ownership. No more. Team Hochberg now has a plan, a loan to help all of these listeners, everyone within the sound of my voice and beyond. Your neighbors, your friends, your coworkers, your children. 1% down if you qualify for this program. You can overcome this down payment challenge with this 1% down loan program without private mortgage insurance. That's saving a whole lot of money, everybody, a whole lot of money. So do yourself a favor and call them and ask them about it. You can go to 56david.com and go online and look and click the link and look at the program. But I would advise you to give them a call. There's nothing like talking to a person and explaining your situation and having them explain the program, and you can see if it's going to work for you, everybody. Team Hochberg has helped thousands upon thousands keep their homes or be on the road to home ownership. So I want you to call them today at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, 1% down to own a home. Fantastic. You know what? I bet you think that you have to be rich. You have to be rich in order to have a financial planner. No, 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 no. What I love about Megget Financial is that they go to unions where people make middle class and working class salaries, and they say, you know what? I want to be your financial planner. I want to show you how to save and invest and prepare for not only a livable retirement, but a respectable one. It can be done, everybody. Dan Leckie, who is your financial guy over at Megget Financial, joins us today. How you doing, Dan Leckie?
I'm great, Santita. How are you?
Talk to me. I need some help because whenever I see wealthy people, they talk about their money people, right? And their investment advisors.
Absolutely.
They have private bankers. You know, they don't even go to, even if they go to the bank that we go to, they go to a special room because they have their own people. And you're like, yeah, that's nice, but I want to be your people. Talk to me. What do you do? What is Megget trying to do? Trying to change the game. How dare you?
Well, we really base our approach on education. You mentioned just a couple seconds ago about how we work with union members. And, most of the union members we work with have a pension, and that's going to be guaranteed income for the rest of the member's life. That's game changing. You kind of look at planning for union members and planning for someone like myself who doesn't have a pension. And you want to balance retirement income versus what I call nest egg savings, right? How much have you put away in a 401k or a Roth IRA or some sort of investment vehicle so you're able to live comfortably in retirement? And it really comes down to education, understanding where you're at and what you need to accomplish your goals. And the sooner you start, the easier it is. And I also think a big part of it is how you live, right? You talk about these people going to the special rooms at the special banks and, and that's perfectly fine for them, but not everybody has that ability or want to do that. And so, we're a very down-to-earth, family-run business, and education is the key. Is looking at everybody individually, analyzing their situation, and just working through a plan that's going to allow them to be successful in retirement.
Do you only work with people who have pensions?
No, the majority of the people we work with have pensions, but we work with everyone.
Well, talk to me. Look, let's disaggregate this. Say someone is making. Can you ever make too little money to come to you? Everybody doesn't make
no
70, 80, 90, 100 plus $1,000 a year. Some people make 50, 40, 30. Is it possible to plan for retirement when you are not breaking the bank, so to speak?
Absolutely. I mean, anyone can plan for retirement, right? Like we spend a lot of our time these days meeting with, 20-something-year-old apprentices with the unions who are starting out in that financial range and don't have anything. So we're happy to develop a plan with anyone. But I also think it's important to note that you are going to need some sort of a plan, some sort of a nest egg or source of income. And for the majority of us like me, that's going to be Social Security. Mm-hmm. And so I get the question all the time, when should I turn Social Security on? And it's really an analytics-based question. Is this your only source of income? How much income do you need to live on in retirement? And what does your nest egg look like? So Yeah, if you're someone who's making $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year, you can still have a retirement plan, but you might need to work a little longer than someone else. But it's still a plan, and it's still a game plan, and it gets you to a place where you're comfortable living while you're no longer working.
Do you think now that you say that you might have to work longer. What if you are, how does that work? I mean, when do you have a time when you look at someone's nest egg, when you look at their financial situation and you say, okay, now's the time for you to go into Social Security? Or do you try to have people wait as long as they can before they go into that system?
No, I think it's definitely a person-by-person situation. So the earliest you can turn Social Security on is going to be age 62. And the latest, it has to be turned on by age 70. And for every year that you wait, that amount goes up roughly by 8%. So you want to take into account what that nest egg is, any other income that a person has. Maybe you have somebody who's slightly older than their spouse and their spouse is working. You want to look at that whole picture and put that together, combine it with what their needs, wants, and goals are, and come up with that time that makes the most sense.
So help me to understand, what would you tell someone who's an apprentice, who's making $30,000-$40,000 a year, maybe? What does that initial meeting look like?
So, again, and I know I keep hammering on this, it's education.
Well, no, let me interrupt you here. I don't think you're hammering on it because most of us are not financially literate, Dan. Most of us don't want to file taxes. It's just, you see all those, all those, yeah, me either, but, I do it. But, the thing is, you see all those words and it's like, I've got to pull out all this information and, it's most of us we want to get the check. We want to endorse it. We want to go on. And what you're doing is stopping people and saying, hey, wait a minute, you need to be much more thoughtful about this. And it's not going to hurt. In fact, eventually it will help you.
And I think some people will think it hurts. If you sit down with somebody and you look at their budget and how much they're bringing in each month and how much is going out each month. And that can be a very eye-opening experience for a person. And it can be a rough experience. If you're bringing in $2,000 a month, and you sit down and you go through everything and you're spending $3,000 a month, obviously we have an issue, right? Most likely you're relying on credit cards and you're going to get yourself into a situation which you just keep digging a bigger hole and it becomes harder to get out of. So I think understanding some basic financial principles and just having a direction, it's really hard to tell a 20-year-old you need to save $500,000 by the time you're 67. That's incomprehensible. No one's going to get that, and you're going to lose. It's a losing battle. But if you can start smaller and say, hey, if you start a Roth IRA now, and you put X amount of dollars away, and say we make 5% a year on that for 40 or 50 years. You're going to have $500,000 or $600,000. It's just the earlier you start, and the magic principle in all of this is compound interest, is reinvesting money you make and letting it work for you. That will grow, but the longer you wait, that break-even point it gets pushed down decades. So if you can get a 20-year-old to start saving $3,000 to $6,000 a year, they're going to be in great shape.
What if you are, let me give you a challenge, but probably not for you.
I know what's coming.
Come on, get ready for it. You're 40, 45, no nest egg. And I say this in this context. Most Americans cannot go to the emergency room. They don't have $400. They don't have 2,000 extra dollars someplace. I mean, most Americans are living really hand to mouth now. What do you say to them? I mean, if you have to go before their union or if you have to go before their group, say, their professional group or their social group, what do you say to them?
In obviously, there's a lot of that, right? I mean, there are a lot of people who are check to check, and there isn't that extra to save. And I think it really comes down at that point to what are the living expenses? How are you living? Are you being frugal enough? And if you are, and there's just no extra, that comes to a point where either, you're waiting to 70 for Social Security. You can look at, do you have the ability to take on, a few extra hours at another job? Can you get a side hustle? And it could be anything, working at Home Depot, driving an Uber, anything to earn a few extra bucks to give yourself a cushion each month to where if you do need to go to the hospital, you have a couple $100. If you get a flat tire, you're going to your savings account, your emergency savings account, versus swiping the Visa card in order to cover those emergency expenses. And once you get in the habit of doing that, even if it's $100 a month, right, it'll start to add up. And they'll start to gain some freedom, some control of their money. One of the biggest things I tell everyone I meet with, and it's the hardest question for any person to answer, is how much money do you need to live on in retirement? Or how much money do you spend enough, or how much money do you spend right now each month to live comfortably the way that you want to live? And the majority of people can't answer that. They don't know. And that's okay, right? Money in, money out. As long as they balance, people feel comfortable, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's when it doesn't balance and they don't know that. So I'll tell someone to take a blank sheet of paper and start on the first of a month. And every time you have an expense or something comes out of your checking account or you use your debit card, just put the date down, the amount, and a short description what it was for. It doesn't have to be a beautiful Excel sheet. It doesn't have to be a fancy application. Just a sheet of paper, put it on a magnet on the fridge, write down all your expenses for a month, and then at the end of the month, add those up and look at how much you brought in and how much you spent. And if you don't like the way that the numbers look, then you start to dive in those expenses. What could I have avoided? What could I have done differently? And if you do that for 2 months in a row, I really think it helps a person gain control of their money. You know where your money's going. And if it's not enough, then you may need to pick up, some extra hours or find another source of income to get that balance out. But it can be done. It just takes hard work. And a lot of people feel, and I'm not sure what the right word is, but they feel defeated before they even get in the fight.
Yes. I mean, because people are really, I was checking out of the grocery store, and my audience have heard me talk about this. And this woman's story, the cashier, her story broke my heart. I looked at my bill. It was just under $100. I hadn't even purchased any protein. I said, "What is this?" And she said, "Oh, ma'am, I tell you, it gets harder and harder for me every month." She said, "I've got a teenage son, and I just can't afford. I can barely afford to shop here." I said, "Well, what do you do?" She said, "Well, sometimes I have to figure it." She said, "My son's going to eat first." And when she said that, I said, "Oh, she's missing meals." I mean, and that is the reality for so many Americans, Dan Lecter. And so, when you come back, yes, I'm preparing for that. I want you to talk about that. As people are having to rob Peter to pay Paul, how they can also plan, because you're telling me, wait a minute, you can pick up another gig. There are other things that you can do to fill in the gaps. And at the same time, begin to plan for your financial future. Am I getting that right?
Yes, absolutely. It's almost that, you have to have a moment where you feel defeated enough to put everything down, to put everything out there, so you can start to analyze it and look at, where are my options, or how much more do I need to where I'm not in this position. And the story that you just told, it's awful, right? And part of that reason is the inflation issue that we're going through right now. And we are seeing some improvement with inflation, but I think almost everyone can agree that we're not seeing it at the grocery stores yet. That's one of the biggest, things that is staying inflated. Food is very, very expensive these days.
Well, when you come back, I want to talk about that. I mean, just how, and then maybe you can help us to chart out a financial plan. Maybe, for the month, like what percentage should go to rent, because many of us don't know, we're not financially literate. Can we start there?
Absolutely. I'd love to come back and delve in a little bit more with specific planning.
Yeah, because I think the fact is, you're now helping me to understand that you actually start with a budget. Like, okay, let's see how much money you're making, how much you get in, what are you putting out? And let's have a self-correction, like right now, if you need it. Dan Leckie, he is your financial services guru at Megan Financial. What is your number? How can we get in touch with you?
You can reach us at 708-444-1090 or at www.megent.com, MEGENT.com.
And what's that number again?
708-444-1090.
Okay. I'm reaching out already. I'm going to reach out to Ron Whittingham and see if maybe he can come on next week, because I think it's something people need to hear about regularly. Yes.
We'd be happy to do it.
Oh, just sending you so much love. Thank you, and blessings to you until the next time. Let's talk with Dr. Max Wolf, everybody, about this economy. I guess we're just talking about the money today, Dan Leckie. What's up with the down economy?
It all ties together.
Oh,
all ties together.
Ain't nothing going on but the rent. That was a song from years ago. Stay right here on the Santita Jackson Show. Coming up, Dr. Maxwell. Thank you, Dan Leckie from Megan Financial. Now, that did not hurt, did it?
No, I feel so terrible. I got your name wrong in the beginning. I woke up and wrote it down wrong. I'm terrible.
Didn't I know you're not? Didn't I tell you to stop that?
Yeah, you did. You did.
Right.
That was great. Santita, I would love to come back on and delve more into the planning aspect and looking at that.
Would you discuss that with Ron? Because the thing is, I know when people hear this regularly, they go, wow. I mean, when my father's he goes to Shirley Ryan fairly regularly.
Oh, did I lose you?
And he stays a week, 2 weeks. They've been very, very kind to him with his Parkinson's. And what strikes my father called me several times. He said, do you know these people listen to your show in the morning? My doctor, 3 of my doctors, they talked about Dr. Max Wolf. They talked about John Nichols. They talked about C.K. Hoffler. And when they hear you on a regular basis, it becomes like destination radio, and they go, oh. And then when you begin to talk about the money and break it down for them, you demystify it, and people cease to be frightened. So making a budget becomes less frightening to them, less intimidating. They don't, and it sounds to me that if you come to them and they're putting out more money than they're taking in, you won't judge them. That means a lot.
Oh, absolutely not. And it does mean a lot, right? And budgets are scary. And I tend to shy away from budgets more as tracking your spending, knowing how much is going out versus in, and then you can delve into the where, and it just
Dr. Wolf is on.
it makes it easier on a person.
So please check with him because I want to get you back because I think if we can just take these baby steps, it'll help people. I really want
Absolutely.
to do that.
I'll talk with him today and have him reach back out, and we'll work something out. Whether it's me or Ron or another advisor, I'd love to come back on, but obviously I don't make that decision. Ron does, but yeah, any of us would love to come back on and continue this conversation because it is important, and not everybody has that pension or has a $2 million nest egg.
Whoa,
so.
Are you crazy? Are you crazy? Most people don't. Most people don't have a nest egg. They don't have enough money to go to the emergency room. Oh my word. It's just
understood. And we need to help them figure out how they can get some money put away to be able to cover an emergency room visit or,
and you can do
to
that.
Cover their groceries, right?
You can do. I want you to meet the economist on my show, Dr. Max Wolf. He talks about this all the time. Dr. Max Wolf. This is Dan Leckie from Megant Financial. They focus on creating a respectable retirement for working and middle class people, which is unusual. You have your own investment guy, Dr. Wolf, Dan Leckie.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to meet you, and thanks for having me.
Dr. Wolf, it's great to meet you as well.
I like what you're saying. It's interesting stuff. I think it makes a lot of sense, too. I think there are steps or plateaus.
30 seconds.
Maybe the first one is to be able to get through a month with no income, or second one is a sort of shock to the system, big car expense, big housing expense. It's always a dark subject, but big relationship expense. If you look at what knocks people down, change in their living situation, which can be for personal reasons.
10 seconds.
And you just keep climbing that ladder until you get to the investment guidance, which is kind of all of it.
Stand by.
Sort of what people usually mean by investment guidance is just a few steps above the ladder from bottom.
Absolutely.
Let me know, Dan.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
To a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
We've got Dr. Max Wolf here on the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Let's talk about what's up with the down economy. I mean, what is up? What is up with inflation? Somebody's saying it's down, and you're telling me, no, I don't feel that. And President Biden's job approval rating continues to take a hit, and there is a direct link, according to pollsters, to his job approval rating and the economy. And the latest CNN poll has him dropping to 37% approval, a signal that he's fallen into profound disfavor with the American public. So I want to know what the deal is and how we can all survive this at the end of the day. How can we survive this? Dr. Max Wolf, how you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me. I do think there's an interesting thing about the Biden poll numbers that people don't get, which is I don't think the Biden poll numbers have much of anything to do with Biden or his job, the job he's doing, which is much better by most standard metrics than those numbers. I think a lot of American politics today, including the Biden numbers, have to do with what's sometimes called the collapse of the middle. So you have a political establishment that picked a candidate that appeals to the middle to beat somebody who had some unique personal attributes and was pretty far out on the right spectrum of standard American politics and who did shockingly well. I would call that the fall of the middle. And you have this guy in the middle and he's doing pretty well, but his poll numbers say he isn't, but his performance is actually pretty good, but he doesn't get much credit for that. That's the fall of the middle. You have a very unusual set of beliefs around the Ukraine Russia conflict. There's probably some heavy tampering now in public opinion on everything, but that looks to me like the fall of the middle. If you look at the sort of support for Israel versus support for Palestinian civilian casualties or interest in Palestinian civilian casualties, you have a story of the collapse of the middle. If you look at whether or not to continue to extend the government's ability to fund itself, you have a collapse of the middle. If you look at the Republican Party looking for someone to run it because the middle collapse, courtesy of a fringy candidate, then you have a collapse in the middle. You have a many-month clown show that gets someone who's pretty far out on the spectrum, right? In the Democratic Party, you see all kinds of disunity, too, around some issues that have historically not been so problematic because the Democratic Party has a collapse in the middle. And if you had the temperament to watch a few minutes of last night's heavy intellectual extravaganza on the Republican Party primary side, you could see a collapse of civility and a fading relationship with reality for some people, and a collapse of the middle. Everybody's kind of ready to say, I'm an extremist candidate in a country where historically everyone ran as a moderate. And I think too much shift too fast leaves the parties, the pundits, and the polls a little behind the public.
Well, I think you make a point. I mean, you do have Donald Trump, who many people feel is an extreme candidate, has extremist views. An argument can be made for that. But that having been said, you have someone who has always been a moderate to conservative, at least within the Democratic context. And it's like water's not seeking its own level. It's like you're not punching at your own weight here. But the fact is, whatever the polls say, Americans are saying, I can't breathe. I cannot afford. I can't afford the United States. I just can't afford. I can't afford my rent. I cannot afford my groceries. And people keep telling me that things are getting better. I'm like, I'm not crazy, or am I?
I think it's a little bit, they are crazy. I think if you pretend something has been happening to you for 40 years and you wake up to it, it's hard to figure out what you're responding to that's happening now and what you're finally catching up to that's happening.
You have a caller.
Last year, the year before, the decade before, the decade before, right? So I got in trouble for this comment, and it's definitely not meant to belittle anything or insult anyone, but I still don't know a better version. So I feel like the American middle class is largely the artist formerly known as the American middle class. And they're beginning the process of politically coming to with no purse in the back of a van. And that is a process that creates some jarring swings in understanding and trust patterns. And I think we're kind of there, right? And that's a tough place because it's hard to benchmark, right? How do you catch the level in this business, right? What's the level rate of inflation? What's the level rate of unemployment? What's the level rate of affordability? How much should a house cost, right? Mm-hmm. And if you sort of try to make a pattern out of it, the American middle class has been priced out of being middle class because they aren't anymore. And no one's going to tell them that. They're not going to get that. So you're going to have a wild process here where some people decide that it's, people kind of decide that it is whoever they're comfortable blaming. Black people, immigrants, Jews, Republicans, Democrats, aliens, internet, whatever, right? It's going to be pick your own scapegoat or pick your own usual suspect and round them up. And that's also a process that collapses the political middle.
We're talking with Dr. Max Wolf about the economy, about Bidenomics, about how you are making it in this economy and what you can do to make it in this economy and how the economy is impacting the presidential election. He just made some profound observation about the position that President Biden is in, because, it's inarguable. He's done a lot of great things. He has. And yet that's not making a dent in the poll numbers. Interesting. Paul from Seattle. Paul, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, all. Let me make a quick point about the poll numbers. I would put about as much stock in the poll numbers as I would in the two things that everybody has, which is an opinion and a rear end, so to speak. They are not actually don't want to get too much into the algebra, but the poll numbers are not taking large enough samples to mean anything, and they are now extrapolating from small sample sizes. And all you have to do is be a volunteer at your local, say, Democratic headquarters and do phone banking to find that if you work a 3 or 4 hour shift, you might get through to, I don't know, 4 or 5 people in that period of time. And you know what? The pollsters aren't having any easier time getting people to answer the phone. That's the first thing. Second thing is, we have been hoodwinked, hornswoggled, and snickered that this is inflation. I'm sorry. If it were inflation, if it were true market inflation, where that's too many dollars chasing too few goods, okay, we would not be experiencing 5.2% quarterly growth. You see, they've been sweeping this under the rug, making us like, oh, it's the Biden economy that's inflation. But somehow you see inflation, it might be not good for the consumer because they have high price, but it's not good for the seller either because that means they don't have enough product really to stay in business. But somehow they're reporting huge profits, which means they have plenty of product and they have been gouging us. They have been gouging us and simply testing what the heights and prices that market can bear because they know that people have jobs. And we see last quarter, third quarter, this 4.9% quarterly growth that was supposed to be adjusted down to, we all thought it would go down to 4% or under 4%, adjusted upward to 5.2%, means that's very robust. We had a Thanksgiving that was the fourth lowest comparative cost in 30 years. And then they said, but Black Friday is going to blah, 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 was one of the most robust in a decade. And we've been hearing for a year, the big crash of 2023 is going to be a economic recession. Haven't seen that. I don't think fourth quarter is lining up to be a recession either. So I kind of agree with the professor that people are simply repeating what they've been told by the corporate right-wing media that, you have a very bad economy. And people just don't know what else to say. Oh, it's a terrible economy. Yeah, because they don't know what else to say. What they're experiencing, I don't think they really have a relative sense, as I like the analogy there. They don't really have a relative sense to know what to compare it to. And everybody, it's always easy to say, everything's too expensive. That's right. Everything has seemed too expensive for as long as I've been alive.
Yeah, but
and by the way, I've never been
well, but the difference
I've never been overpaid either. So
well, no, that's true. But the difference is a lot of people now, as long as we have been alive, now they can't go to the emergency room. Now they cannot afford groceries. I mean, I see them come to Rainbow Push all the time. I see them going to the churches. We had Pastor Darius Brooks on, who is giving away bags full of food every week, and the line continues to grow. He's giving away hundreds of bags of food to people who are driving luxury cars, some no cars at all. I mean, there's something, it seems like there's just something that fundamentally needs to be changed. Stay right there, Paul. Dr. Wolf, why don't you speak to what Paul has just asserted?
Yeah, so I think there's two things that are important. I think Paul sounds like he's very familiar and fluent with the sort of economic terminology, but it gets thrown around by journalists and absorbed by the public, and there are a lot of different levels of understanding, right? So inflation, I think he's correct on. Inflation is what's the speed at which prices are rising. Since prices have risen, if prices were unaffordable for you 6 months ago or 12 months ago, and they're only a little bit higher, it's going to help you very much, right? Because inflation is telling us how quickly they're going up. But if they've already reached or exceeded your affordability, then the fact that they're moving further and further out of view for you at a slower pace, probably not going to hit you in terms of your general sentiment about how things are doing. I would make an argument that you never hear, which we know statistically to be true. I think it's always interesting when you don't hear them, which is a lot of the reason that more vulnerable people feel much poorer now is because they are. And they are right. And what they don't understand is that's because all the pandemic era special support things were the largest reinvestment in the well-being of poor Americans in 40 years. And they worked. And they worked so well that they terrified people. And it became the number one priority of the Republican Party to fight them when they came in and then to cancel them as fast as possible. And I think for a lot of economically vulnerable people, their perception of the business cycle and the failure of the Biden administration is very much tied to a rapid and aggressive withdrawal of supports that were instituted during COVID, because the sort of disease rates slowed a bit, although they're still here, but the public didn't recover. So these people got help late in the process, but well late into the suffering associated with COVID, the economic suffering, leaving aside the sort of human, personal stuff and the psychological stuff. But then that was very aggressively withdrawn very quickly before there was any real economic recovery for them. And that late advance of some help and then rapid withdrawal of the help has put them on a sort of whiplash recession trajectory. So they report to you, hey, I'm having a recession. And they're not wrong, other than Paul's also right. Macroeconomically, that is not correct. Their identified cause of this whiplash and this decline in the economic activity is actually probably not correct, right? And this has been what I found, and maybe it sounds haughty, I don't mean it to, that the public is really good at knowing how they're doing. And that's not usually wise to second guess them, right? Partly because they hate it, but also partly because they kind of know what's happening in their apartment better than we do. But the reasons that they give for it is highly tied to organized campaigns of information, some of which border or cross the border into disinformation.
Let me go to.
You know what I mean? So,
I
don't think.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And because the thing is, we just know how we feel, but really understanding the nuances, we're in the midst, but we don't understand what we're in, Dr. Wolf. We really don't. We don't understand, okay, real wage is not moving for going toward half a century. What does that mean? What's all that mean?
So the best discipline in trying to understand things I've ever learned or been able to try to teach anyone is the following. Any and every explanation that begins with they're evil or they're stupid leads you, even if you're correct in some cases, to a terrible place and is quite divisive, right? Real analytics, the best of human analysis, which is a wonderful thing. It's probably what makes us different than animals, although who knows, yet to be determined, I guess, is to say, what if they're not stupid? What if they're not evil? What do they see that I don't? Or how do they see what we both see differently, right? And so generally, although it's not foolproof and it can lead you astray sometimes, that's, for me, has been the best way to try to make sense of how the public sees the economy. Just for me, it's just a way to learn from someone else.
Ted, what's on your mind today?
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thank you.
And I got to tell you, I listen to your show every day, Santita, and I guess none of you live in the suburbs of Chicago.
No, I
because
don't.
All right, well, out in the suburbs of Chicago, things are better than they've ever been. I see people with nicer cars, more home improvements to homes that are already max priced, less people working during the day than ever, but yet everybody's complaining about the economy. It's never been better. Santita, there's a lack of gratitude here that I think God is ultimately going to punish. That's how bad it is.
Well, let me ask
see
you
how
this.
good people have.
Oh, you're
go ahead.
emotional about this. I hear that. Talk to me.
Well, because people don't show gratitude here in this great country that's given so much to everybody. I mean, I see them driving around in their way oversized, ridiculous, nonsense, giant cars in their beautifully well-kept, better than ever before homes. And I hear you guys talking about how nobody has anything. Yet I hear that we don't have enough workers. I see everybody hanging during the day, including myself, thank you, God. And I just don't, this disconnect is just disgraceful.
Well, let me
how little they're gratitude.
Well, no, let me explain some of it to you, because I know I'm very grateful to this country, and I'm from a people who were enslaved directly, and Native American people who were disenfranchised from their lands. I mean, that's my direct family link, right? And Irish people, and Irish people who I'm just trying to give you a little bit of my background, right? That having been said, down the street from me, there are people who don't have heat in their home. It's not that they don't work every day. I see people across the street from me. They're the essential workers. They're the ones who work straight through the pandemic. They don't have enough money. And it's not that they're overspending, they don't have enough money to overspend. I see who comes through Rainbow Push throughout the week. People are hungry. You're right, there's a disconnect between affluent communities and working class and poor communities. And I'm just trying to explain to you that it does exist, not because people are lazy, and that's not what you were charging. It's not because people are ungrateful. No, it's people are underpaid. For example, it takes black women 10 and a half months to make 10 and a half months more to make what a white man makes in 12 months. It takes me 22 and a half months. Indigenous women, it takes them 23 and a half months. So there is a pay gap for women. There's a wealth gap that exists between blacks and whites. Black women look up, and at the end of our work lives, we're missing $1 million because we've been underpaid. And what I'm saying to you is, I hear you, great opportunity, but the opportunity's not been spread around evenly, Ted. And so when you have that, it's not that you have ingratitude. The thing is, I want part of the American dream too. I just don't want it to be my nightmare. But stay right there, Ted, because I think that perhaps, and I want you to engage us. I don't want you to leave, Ted. I want us to talk with one another because I hear your emotion and I want to engage you. Dr. Wolf.
Yeah, so I think I understand exactly what Ted is saying, and I don't think that what you and Ted are saying are necessarily incommensurate or couldn't line up. I think there are a lot of people who are doing pretty well in the U.S., and it's in vogue right now for them to poo-poo the economy, poo-poo the White House, sort of put down the politicians. And they have good reasons for some of that, but they do a lot of it. And there's a lot of, whatever I have, I ought to have more, right? And I think that's kind of a classic definition of an ingratitude. And I also think there's a reality here, which is the world is changing fast. It's changing in many ways. Some of those are going to be hard for America as an entity, hard for the American middle class. And a lot of people who are busy putting down their present circumstance are going to reflect on it real fondly in the not too distant future. And it's hard to see that. I think that might be what Ted is saying. Mm-hmm. And we see it in the numbers too, by the way. So we see a lot of communities and a lot of people who are getting incredible amount out of this economy in this country and who have decided that they should be kind of responding to that with an ever more avaricious critique of how much they didn't get that they want and how much more they want. And if they have one fancy car, they want two. And if they have one fancy home, they want a bigger one or a second one. And that always coincides side by side with want. Because if some people are getting too much and are not appreciative of it enough, there's people out there who aren't getting enough. They are always together, those facets of a society.
What, Ted, are you still there?
I am, and that was brilliant. That was brilliant, Dr. Wolf, no doubt. Absolutely. That sums it up nice. Yeah.
Ted, I've got 1 minute for you before Dr. Wolf closes everything out.
Okay, thanks, Santita. Everybody, join me. Drop to your knees and say, thank you, God, for the unbelievable life you've given me, and help me to have gratitude about the things I have, rather than always looking at what I don't have. I mean, we got to have gratitude here. Mm-hmm. I've never, Doc, let's let Doc, he said it right, man. He said.
Well, may I add to your prayer? Let us pray that,
yes,
that the structural inequalities that have disadvantaged some and advantaged others will be healed. There is a breach. There is a breach.
I got you. That is not a prayer, Santita, because look at all the jokes.
No, it is, because I my parents worked for Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Before Dr. King got his PhD, but he was first a man of the cloth. And he felt that poverty was a sin, that in a world made by God, for any of God's children to be hungry, to be homeless, to be unhoused, to be unclothed, to not be able to actualize themselves is shameful. And some people are brokenhearted, Ted. And so when you ask people to drop to their knees, particularly when they have been dropped to their knees, the people of Tulsa, they had a bomb dropped on them which dropped them to their knees. It was the first time a bomb was dropped in America on American soil, and it was dropped by the white citizens of Tulsa on Black people. So I want us to look at the whole thing, and I think that if we look at the whole thing, we can come up with holistic answers that'll help everybody. Okay, so I just want you to just think about that. Okay. Dale? Well, just think.
He's no longer on.
Think about that. Think about that. I'm saying drop to your knees. I hear you. I hear you. America's a great place, but America needs to be a fair place. And it has not been that for everybody. And we have to be honest about that. So when you say that to a people who have been enslaved, who did not work for free, but who were not paid for their work, when you talk to indigenous people upon whose land we sit, who were not paid for their land, who had their land stolen from them, no, people are feeling some kind of way. When you have people brought into this country so that we can still underpay them, they're feeling some kind of way. And can you make it in spite of all of that? Yeah, but should you have to? No. So we still have a wealth gap. We still have a pay gap. And those breaches need to be healed, everybody. So get on your knees and pray for that. And then when you get up, work to end that so that everybody can get a bite at the apple from the tree of life. Everyone deserves that. Sending you much love, Dr. Wolf. Much, 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 much love. It needs to be part of your
Thank you for
prayer.
having me.
Oh, always, always. Sending you much love, everybody. God bless you. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Alex, thank you for a great show. Stepping up for everybody this week. Sending you much love. Morning stars, I love you. I'm running today. My eyes are driving me crazy, so I'm trying to get to the ophthalmologist after I run a few other errands. But I love you. God bless everybody.